Hi, this is Richard Garfield with the Game Glimpse. Each week I'm going to bring you a game that I've been thinking about. I'll tell you what interests me in the game and maybe you'll be motivated to try it. If you've already tried it, maybe it'll give you stuff to think about, or just disagree with. The game I'm going to talk about today is Seven Wonders by Antoine Bauza. My copy is published by Repos Production. In this game, players strive to build a wonder of the ancient world. For example, the pyramids of Giza or the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The game takes place over 3 ages. Each of the ages, players draft a set of 6 cards out of 7. The cards represent a lot of different things, including resources, military power, and some wacky effects. The cards you draft you can either play in front of you, or you can discard them for gold, which is a useful resource, or you can use them to build one of the stages of your wonder. In the basic game, wonders are 3 stages. In the advanced game, they can be anywhere from 2 to 4, or 1 if you've got a special promo card they had at Essen. Each time you complete a stage, you get something, usually victory points, but occasionally some sort of wacky power. For instance, when you're working on the mausoleum, you can take cards that have been discarded and put them directly into play. After the 3 ages are finished, you tally up all your victory points and compare it with your neighbors, and whoever has the most victory points wins. A draft is a mechanic where cards or other resources are divided up among players with some degree of choice for the players. There are many different types of drafts. For example, Ticket to Ride has a draft. Each turn that you choose, you can pick from the face-up cards, or you can take from the top of the deck. Also, games that auction off cards or resources can often be considered drafts. One of my favorite types of drafts, however, is the draft format that Seven Wonders uses, which I call a booster draft. In a booster draft, each player gets a set of cards or resources and selects one and passes the remainder to one of their neighbors. Then they take the pack that's been passed to them and choose one of those cards and so forth. This sort of drafting is often used in trading card games. Some board games do use it, but not that many. One of my favorite uses of it in a game is a card game called Fairy Tale, which is published by Z-Man, and it's by some Japanese designers. In Notre Dame, you also see a booster draft, although that's only 3 cards, and it's not really the focus of the game. Booster drafts are really nice because everybody acts simultaneously, and there's a reasonable amount of hidden information. That is, your set of cards that you choose from, nobody else knows what that is until the remainder of it is passed to them. For me, this combination of simultaneous movement and hidden information often results in a really appealing drafting system. There's a lot of interesting potential gameplay there. Seven Wonders has an interesting and I think original mechanic that every time you draft a card, you play it out in front of you. This plays in a very interesting way, although it does undermine some of the hidden information that I like in Booster Draft. Since every time players draft a card, you get to see what it is immediately rather than being forced to wait till the end of the draft to see what people have drafted. The way you interact with your neighbors is quite interesting in Seven Wonders. The cards you play generally have some resource requirement, and if you have those resources, you can play the card. But that's not the end of the story. If your neighbors have those resources, you can purchase it from them at the cost of 2 gold, or 1 gold if you've bought certain upgrades. This means that the resources that your neighbors play is really important to your strategy. The last game I played, my lazy neighbors didn't draft any glass, and so I didn't have any access to it, and it really hurt me in the last age of the game. However, they had access to glass from their neighbor. This can lead to really interesting strategies as you attempt to draft things which your neighbors don't have access to and keep it from them in the future so that they're forced to keep buying from you, and people who aren't lucky enough to be your neighbors can't get it at all. Another way you interact with your neighbors is with military power. At the end of each age, you add up your military power, and if you're bigger than your neighbor on the left, you get a bonus. If you're less, you get a penalty in victory points. And then you do the same comparison with the neighbor on your right. But those are the only 2 people who affect you directly militarily. You just compare your military to your neighbors, not any other players. This interaction with your neighbors is interesting and simple, a nice combination. And from the outset, you can look at your neighbor's wonders and see what sort of neighbor you're going to have. If their neighbor is the Colossus of Rhodes, well, that gives them military power, and so you can expect to have some military on that side. Similarly, if your neighbor requires a lot of resources to get their wonder done, maybe they'll be supplying you with some resources indirectly. Seven Wonders is fast, and probably plays quite fast even with a large number of players. I've only played with up to 5 players, but I wouldn't be surprised if a draft like this doesn't get too much slower with more people. Given that each age you draft off all the available cards, there is a lot of latitude for calculation, and I'm sure advanced players could play quite skillfully. This could be good if that's what your play group likes to do. It could also be bad in that your game could bog down as people calculate what's available, what's out there, and the various payoffs for different cards. I play with both sorts of groups, so I choose my games accordingly. Right now, while the game is fresh, I can play with any play group, probably. But after we become better at the game, I can imagine there are some players that I won't want to play with because they'll spend too much time calculating. And at that point, games can become more about accounting than gameplay. But until that time, we're having a great time, and after that time, I'm sure with more casual players, it will still be fun. And now it's time for the kids' turn. Skylar, tell me what you think about Seven Wonders.
I like how each wonder had its own little thing, like that it does, and provides its own unit of resource, and how you play those cards that help you resource and build statues to help you get Veeps and all that sort of stuff.
Was there anything you remember from last night's game that was fun?
Beer.
What about beer?
That one card, if you buy it, the winner has to give you a beer, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's the promo power from Essen.
So what happens if like a group of kids play and they win the beer?
I think maybe they play for soda instead. Do you want to play again?
Yeah, of course.
And that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Game Glimpse. Feel free to leave any comments you have. If you want to suggest any games, you can do that too. Maybe your game will be the next one I glimpse.
It's a good game.